Let's dive right into this explainer and uncover the unseen, often incredibly isolating struggles of being highly intelligent. We usually think of high intelligence as this ultimate advantage, right? Like it's a golden ticket to academic success, a booming career, and a life where problems just sort of solve themselves. But there's always another side to the coin, and being the smartest person in the room isn't always a piece of cake. So today, we're going to look way past the shiny achievements and the accolades to explore the hidden burdens that come with having a highly active, brilliant mind. But before we get into those hidden struggles, I really want you to take a second and reconsider your preconceived notions about what actually makes someone smart. I mean, what is intelligence, really? We throw that word around constantly, but it's actually a remarkably complex, multidimensional thing. It can mean a completely different thing depending on who you ask, which makes it incredibly hard to just neatly put into a single box. And I think this brilliantly illustrates our starting point. Intelligence is absolutely not as simple as an IQ score. In fact, this is something that the late, great Stephen Hawking thoroughly denounced. And, well, I think we can all agree that Mr. Hawking was a pretty smart guy. Relying purely on a standardized number just strips away all the nuance of what a truly gifted mind actually does out there in the real world. So we need to establish a baseline for this explainer. No matter what specific definition you personally adhere to, you usually know intelligence when you see it, right? A highly intelligent person is someone who's just incredibly gifted at analyzing concepts, building upon them to form a deeper understanding, and seeing exactly how everything in the world connects, like a giant puzzle. They're the trailblazers. But as you'll see, that dynamic, analytical worldview comes with a very specific set of challenges. All right, moving into section 1, the social disconnect, navigating a world of small talk and isolation. You've probably heard that old saying, great minds discuss ideas, average minds discuss events, small minds discuss people. Well, highly intelligent people simply aren't drawn to what they consider the unimportant, everyday details of life. Chatting about the latest sports game or, the neighbor's new lawn flamingo just isn't on their radar. Instead, they want to go deep. They crave the abstract and the thought-provoking. Because of this, standard small talk doesn't just feel boring to them, it actually feels physically exhausting and like a massive waste of time. Now, what's really fascinating is that this social disconnect isn't just a myth, it's totally backed by science. You know that classic movie trope of the awkward nerd with the wide-eyed stare when they realize they just said the wrong thing? The media definitely exaggerates it, but they aren't entirely off base. A 2015 study by Davidson showed an actual trade-off here. It turns out people who have a high IQ often tend to have a lower EQ, or emotional intelligence. And EQ is exactly the tool we use to form relationships and navigate social spaces. Life is all about trade-offs, and wow, this is a big one. Which leads us to a pretty painful reality for a lot of gifted individuals. People are just plain intimidated by high intelligence. It makes finding true friends and finding your actual crowd a huge challenge. People often get this vibe that someone is just too smart for them. They feel like they can't relate. Or worse, they get insecure and feel like they aren't smart enough themselves. And since nobody likes feeling that way, the easiest out is just to avoid befriending the smart person. The result? The highly intelligent person gets profoundly, deeply lonely. And right here is where we see the snowball effect in action. Because you aren't great at small talk and find it hard to make friends, you just don't go out much. So, to fill that void, what do? You throw yourself entirely into academics or your career. It just becomes work, work, work. But here's the real danger. Even if you absolutely love your job, this severe life imbalance eventually leads straight to burnout, unhappiness, and a really unexpected drop in self-esteem. That takes us to section 2, an overactive, restless mind, the internal mental trap. Quick question for you. Have you ever heard of paralysis by analysis? This is a massive, incredibly common struggle for the highly intelligent. It happens when you are completely paralyzed by the need to always find the absolute correct answer. Actually, scratch that. Not just a good answer, but the literal most correct answer possible, so you can make the absolute flawless decision. The core issue here is super simple. There is so much input that it completely clogs your output. Highly intelligent folks tend to think way, way more than they speak. If they do choose to chime in, they've probably already considered the topic from every conceivable angle, complete with footnotes and logic trees. But processing all those angles, all those pros and cons, it causes these long, heavy silences while they construct a thought. It makes them come off as reserved, maybe overly serious, and ultimately leads to severe indecisiveness in their everyday lives. To make matters even more complicated, an intelligent mind essentially has the munchies. It needs constant, nonstop intellectual stimulation. You're always itching to dive into a new discovery or stretch those mental muscles. Because of this, standard everyday tasks just feel like problems you've already solved. They are a total drag. Pretty soon, so many things give you that been there, done that feeling that simply finding the next engaging thing becomes an arduous, exhausting chore. Which brings us to Section 3, the weight of expectations, the pressure to constantly succeed. To paraphrase a classic saying, with great intelligence comes great expectation. If you're someone with a highly active mind, you have undoubtedly felt this crushing, indirect pressure to succeed at everything you touch. And where does it come from? Literally everywhere, and everyone. Just think about those seemingly harmless passing comments from friends. So, another 4.0 this semester, obviously. Or, drinks are on you for being Employee of the Month again, right? They totally sound supportive on the surface, but every single time someone drops a line like that, a little part of your brain logs it. It whispers, "This is your place. You need to be here, always." The pressure to maintain your status as the smart one just becomes this relentless drumbeat in the background of your entire life. So, the big takeaway here is the psychological toll this takes on a person. You end up pushing yourself endlessly to constantly prove your intelligence, which leads directly to an extreme exacerbated perfectionism. And even more dangerously, it breeds an incredibly unhealthy, disproportionate fear of failure. Failing doesn't just feel like a temporary setback. To a highly intelligent person, it literally feels like losing their core identity. And finally, Section 4. You define who you are, breaking free from the brain label. Because while getting a quick win by knowing things others don't feels great in the moment, the social toll of being boxed in is very real. Society often reduces gifted people to just a brain, or literally just an IQ score. A lot of folks might never even attempt to look past that surface level to get to know the real you. Sometimes they might even villainize you purely out of their own jealousy. And this whole shebang leaves you feeling completely disconnected, totally misunderstood, and incredibly lonely. But I want you to walk away from this explainer with one absolute empowering truth. Others do not validate who you are. Only you do. There is absolutely nothing wrong with you for being exactly how your brain is wired. You do not need to dumb yourself down just to be accepted. Your worth isn't a test score, and it for sure isn't defined by the limitations or the insecurities of the people around you. You get to create your own identity. So, as we wrap things up today, I've got to ask you to chew on this final thought. Which of these hidden struggles do you actually relate to the most? Is it the utter exhaustion of small talk, the constant paralysis by analysis, or that crushing weight of expectations? Recognizing these burdens is step one to actually managing them. Thank you so much for exploring this with us today, and hey, keep nurturing that brilliant mind of yours.